It's the Guitar Dads!
Welcome to the Guitar Dads podcast, the podcast for guitar dads by guitar dads. This week we're putting the pedal to the metal. Matt's lesson to modeling than a retired Victoria's Secret girl. And should we be deducting who's getting inducted? The votes are in this week on the Guitar Dads podcast. Now, here are two guys more distorted than a DS1, Matt and Dave.
Hello, everybody. I'm Matt.
I'm Dave. Welcome to the pod.
Lesson to modeling than a retired Victoria's Secret model?
Oh, yes. Okay. We'll talk about this.
Okay. I mean, I don't know how true that is, but okay. All right. That's kind of interesting. All right. Well, welcome back to the podcast, everybody.
Welcome back. Jeez, it's a Friday night, and you can feel it.
It's a Friday night, and we're feeling all right. That is for sure. Right. So here we go into the podcast. Thank you for listening. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for liking our stuff on Instagram. Please continue to do that, right, Dave?
Yes, please continue. We really appreciate everything, every one of you that's out there. We've seen a number of new fans pop on in the last week, so thank you. Welcome. We appreciate it. We hope we can provide top-notch content for you guys, and we hope you enjoy it going forward. Check us out on YouTube. Search Guitar Dads. New content coming out every week. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Guitar Dads Pod. Both of those. And what else? That's about it. Yeah. So
and YouTube, like you said, YouTube as well.
YouTube.
Check out YouTube.
Check us out. We want some comments. We want to hear what you guys want to hear from us. And let you guys control the show a little bit. So
there'll be some content up there as well. Yeah. So what happened this week, Dave?
I don't know. What did happen this week?
Well, some big stuff happened in the music community this week. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame announced its class of 2021 inductees.
Yes,
and let's just before we even get into that, let's just start off with talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in general. Do you care as a music fan? Do you care about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Yes and no. See,
yeah.
So
it is a complicated question.
It's a very complicated question. See, I think it's necessary because I think we need as a music community, there needs to be some kind of a way to honor some of the best acts, right?
So the Grammys isn't enough for you?
The Grammys, that's a good point, but that's more of a popularity contest than the Hall of Fame is. See, although we're going to get into this, we should talk about the voting for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it is.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I think it's necessary to kind of recognize some of the greatest acts that have, influenced a lot of people and kind of been great acts for a number of years and top of their game kind of people. So I think it's. Yeah, I think it has its place. Is it as much of an honor to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as say like a sports Hall of Fame, baseball, NFL, whatever, any one of those, or even like winning like an Oscar or a Golden Globe or a Grammy or whatever, you name it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't necessarily think so, but I think it definitely has its place.
Yeah, no, I think we're kind of in the same thinking on this is, I think it is cool to see some, long-standing acts, especially your favorite acts, get inducted. It's kind of a cool thing, but at the same time, it's like, does it really matter? Like if you're a big fan of these bands, is it really going to piss you off if they are inducted or not? I don't know. I mean, it's a fun thing that's out there. I don't know if it's really all that important in the great scheme of things. I guess, in the end, none of this is.
Yes, that's right. In the grand scheme of life.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of life, it's really important.
Now you're getting all philosophical.
Yeah, let's not get all existential on us.
Yeah.
But at the same time, is it, as a music fan, is it something I think about and care about? Not really, but it does spark some controversy every year, right? So let's just get into it. So for this year, the class is, if you guys haven't heard, if you're kind of like us and don't really care all that much, so Jay-Z, Foo Fighters, which we love, right? They're a total guitar dad band, right?
Yep.
Carole King, the Go-Go's.
Oh, Carole King's a total guitar dad band.
Yeah. Carol. I respect Carole King as a songwriter, but
I do too.
Talk about boring songs. Like,
yeah.
You know, like,
not my thing.
Give me a break. You know, like that's a snooze fest. Tina Turner. She was inducted, so that was really good. And then another really cool thing that they did is they're doing some kind of like special recognition thing for Randy Rhodes, which is
I heard about this.
Which is incredibly cool. Incredibly cool. They're recognized for its musical excellence awards, and the other people that are being recognized for that are LL Cool J and Todd. I can't pronounce the name. I can't pronounce his name. Todd. What is
Rundgren?
it? Rundgren. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, Todd Rundgren. I can never say his name.
Can I stop you there and
Go
ask
ahead.
you a question? Do you think that a change is necessary? Do you think that they either need to change the name to the Music Hall of Fame, or do they need to have categories?
Yeah, maybe categories is an interesting piece of this. Categories might actually be a good shout on this, but I don't like to get into this whole thing about boomerism. Like the OK Boomer movement, but it is such a boomer thing to say, oh, Jay-Z, he's not rock and roll, he shouldn't be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like, come on, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has been inducting like Motown artists and R&B artists for a long time. Like, get over that. Like, just get over that, right?
Right,
the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
You don't think it will help if they change the name then?
I don't think they should change the name because like Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is like a name, and I don't know if they should change it. But I agree, like not calling it rock and roll, if it's Jay-Z makes some kind of sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think for all intents and purposes, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is the music hall, the pop kind of Hall of Fame, right? So it's like it is what it is.
It is what
so
it is.
It's like, should they change the name? Should people like Jay-Z and LL Cool J not be inducted? Like, no, like there's not like a rap Hall of Fame, right? like just because you don't like the music, like I don't like everything that gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, right? Like just because you don't like the music doesn't mean like we need to like be changing around and like it can only be rock and roll because it's called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like that, like rock and roll is about like being free and being open. Like it's not about like all these hard and fast rules, which kind of like contradicts the whole idea of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But anyway,
right. Well, yeah, but it's not to let in some of these acts like a Jay-Z or who else who do we talk about?
LL Cool J.
LL Cool J, right? I mean, or even Tina Turner, right? I mean, we're not talking
Tina Turner, yeah.
Pure rock and roll, right? But I think it's really diminishing what some of these who some of these artists are if you don't put them in.
I agree. I think some of these artists, like you can't deny, like, look, I'm not a huge fan of rap. Probably a lot of people that are listening to this aren't a huge fans of rap. But like Jay-Z, like you got to admit, like the guy's like a monster in the rap world.
Oh,
right?
absolute
like,
monster.
He just is, right? So, like, if you're going to recognize other big, huge selling acts, like he sold just as much as a lot of other people that are in the hall, right? So, like, at some point, it's like, this is ridiculous. Like, you can't just exclude certain genres of music.
No, you can't.
Although
I'll make a little connection, and I'm sure you knew this. Did you know that Whitesnake, Is This Love, was actually written for Tina Turner? And upon recording it, Coverdale realized and said, I can't let this go. And he kept
interesting.
It for himself.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
So
that's
a
nice
little rock and roll
tidbit.
tie-in with Tina Turner.
Oh, well, I mean, Tina Turner was rockish enough. I mean, she toured with like a full-on rock band, if we're honest, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
she's pretty rock and roll.
Tina's awesome. She's incredible.
I mean, she's pretty rock and roll. Yeah. But so I don't know. I think it's a good class that was inducted for this year. I mean, obviously the Foos are iconic and, absolutely need to be there. For me, that's the big highlight. Everybody else, I'm like, yeah, Tina Turner, it's all good. But let's talk about the snubs, Dave. I mean, no one cares about who got in. Let's talk about the snub.
Yeah,
who got snubbed? So
who was on the list of snubs?
So the two, for me, the biggest snubs were Rage Against the Machine and Iron Maiden.
Okay, now I'm just gonna say we are not neither one of us are huge Iron Maiden fans.
No, we're not.
However, when we watch them live,
yeah,
I don't think either one of us could deny that it's just some of the most incredible.
It's
music.
Amazing.
But it's just they're killer. They really are in terms of like
they are awesome. Like
I
would go to.
It's not really my thing, but yeah, that.
It's not my style. It's not my style, but I agree. Like I've seen like their live like DVDs. And you know what's amazing about their live shows is that the crowd sings along with the guitar solos. Like people don't even do that. Like people don't even do that like at GNR. Like
exactly. What other band has bands that sing the solo?
They sing the solos. It's crazy. So anyway, Iron Maiden, totally iconic band, and Rage Against the Machine gets snubbed too. So actually, I have an article here. Our buddy Gene Simmons came out and said this is ridiculous. They deserve it more than anybody. This is a travesty. Gene Simmons, always looking for a headline.
It's a travesty, a sham, and a mockery. It's a Travis mockery. If you remember the old commercial. But no, I think okay.
He said, quote, "The Hall should be ashamed of themselves."
They should. Of course Gene's going to say that.
Of course Gene's, I know, like of course
Gene
he's going to
loves
say
to make
that.
waves.
Yeah, it's so good.
But do you think that's a snub?
Oh, it's a total. I mean, come on. These people are a lot more popular than a lot of people that are being inducted for this year. Like, I'm sorry. Like, they just are.
Do you think that's a blatant political move?
I have no idea, Dave.
I mean, I don't want to get into politics on this podcast, but...
Well, you mean political...
Do you think that the nature of who they are...
Of Rage, you mean?
Yeah. Do you think that kind of led to them being snubbed? Or do you think they'll eventually get in?
No, I don't think like Rage's super political views are impacting that. I don't necessarily think. I mean, there's got to be other people in there who've had really, extreme political views, right? So it's like I don't know, and even Rage isn't that extreme, right? So they are, but then they're really not. Especially these days in politics.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Days.
So so I think it's a legit snub. I gotta say, I think it's a legit snub, and I think I would agree with Gene that they should be ashamed of themselves.
They really should.
But they'll probably be one of those bands that'll get in eventually, and the same with Iron Maiden. Like they'll probably be inducted at some point. But Iron Maiden's like they've been around for a while. I think that's even more of a snub than Rage.
Yeah,
honestly.
I'm actually pretty shocked by that. And truth be told, you just told me this before the show, but I'm really blown away by that.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of interesting. So this goes back to your points about like who votes and how does this work. And like I never really cared enough to pay a lot of attention to it, but there's like a lot of people out there in the music industry that vote for this. Right? It's not like like this like small group of people in like a room somewhere. It's like a lot of ballots go out to a lot of people, right? So I mean, it's interesting that they would be snubbed like this. So I don't know the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's a fun thing to talk about. Is it really something we care about as music fans? Probably not.
Probably not. No. But it is kind of fun. It is definitely a fun topic, and because it definitely sparks interest and sparks discussion about deserving bands, best acts of all time, and that kind of thing. So it's fun.
It is a fun thing, especially for guitar dads to talk about. It's like the ultimate guitar dad topic almost.
Oh yeah.
No, this band should be in.
What's that?
It's like, no, this band should have been in. This band should have been in. And Gene Simmons being like the ultimate guitar dad. He has to have his 2 cents in there. So,
well, I think what we need to have the Guitar Dads Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, well, we need the Guitar Dads Hall of Fame.
Yeah, we should do it. We should do a segment on that in an upcoming pod.
I mean, you guys already know what our Hall of Fame, who it is already. So yeah, because we talk about them every podcast.
Yeah, in your mind, there's 2 guys, two acts.
Yeah.
In the hall, and that's it. Nobody else is deserving.
That's true. It's basically Guns N' Roses and Led Zeppelin for me.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know what? Speaking of that, Guns N' Roses. So today in one of the Gibson Les Paul groups on Facebook that I'm in, somebody actually like, I mean, I think it was definitely a troll. It was obviously a troll, but someone's like, I don't understand why Slash is so popular and why he has so many signatures and why he's this like ambassador for Gibson guitars. Like he's not that good. And of course, like it went insane.
Oh, that is such a troll comment.
The comments went insane. By the time I got to the post, like there was like 100 comments, and the comments had been turned off.
That's a jerk. That's a real jerk troll.
Yeah, like you don't
there.
come to a Gibson Les Paul Facebook group and post like Slash sucks. And I think actually in this group there's a rule that you can't like bash artists too. So I'm surprised the whole thing just wasn't deleted. But it was. I was looking at it. I was like, is this guy serious? Like, give me a break.
Particularly Slash too. That's like, you know.
I know. But people say the same thing about Jimmy Page. There's probably some people listening to this right now that are like, I don't like Slash. I don't like Jimmy Page. They're not my cup of tea. You know, and I get it. You know, everybody has their idols and their favorite people. So
yeah, no, I just like, and we've talked about stuff like this before, where you don't necessarily have to like an act to really appreciate what they've done for music, right? And
exactly.
we just mentioned acts that have gotten into the hall that have done a ton for music that we're not really that into, right?
Yeah, we're not into it. Yeah, so it's what it is. Yeah, so anyway, I mean, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is cool. So, you know, we'll see what happens. Maybe Iron Maiden will get in one of these days and Rage will get in. So I think Rage like just became eligible. So they probably have some time to get in. So
I wonder what the eligibility criteria is.
You can look it up. I think it's like 25 years.
Is it 25? Wow.
Yeah. So I think like Rage is kind of just coming up on that because they really didn't have a good hit album until I think 25 years. I think it was mid 90s. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up.
Well, let's say. I'm sorry. 25 years ago would have been. Yeah, I guess mid 90s. Yeah, late 90s. Late 90s. If I'm doing
you're right.
Correctly.
So artists have to have had released their first record 25 years earlier and have created music whose originality, impact, and influence has changed the course of rock and roll.
There you go. Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. I think you can obviously argue that for Iron Maiden and Rage.
Oh,
right.
And no question.
And the fact that they took so long to induct Rhodes. Induct Randy Rhodes.
Yeah, seriously.
Like, come on. Like he's probably one of the most influential guys in rock and roll ever for that type of music, if we're honest, right? So
no, even just in general. I mean,
yeah. I mean, he was that Blizzard of Oz album influenced so many guitar players. You know who an influence? You know who it was? You know who actually said that he was a big influence of him is Slash.
Oh, really? Yeah. Wow. I can see that.
Yeah. Like Slash was like a kid, like a teenager when that stuff came out, and that really influenced. You know, he told the story about like when that came out. I was like, oh my god, like this is unbelievable. So like, you know, these guys are incredibly influential, and you know, and I think you can say the same about Tom and Rage Against the Machine, right? So I mean, come on. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
They'll both. I think both. You're right. Maiden and Rage will both get in at some point
eventually,
and deservedly so.
Speaking of Rage Against the Machine, this is my transition, Dave.
Nice transition.
So Rage Against the Machine was known for using a lot of guitar pedals and effects in new and different ways.
Yes.
In new and different ways, which brings us to, we kind of touched on last week, the pedal movie. So let's talk about that. I had a chance to watch it. And we can talk about it a little bit. I thought it was great. Did you get a chance to watch it, Dave?
I watched I started a little bit late the other night, and I was expecting to try to get through at least most of it. I saw the first hour, so I got to finish it up.
Yeah. It's a long movie. It's like 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, it is.
It's really cool. So, I mean, I'll give you my little, opinion on it, my like synopsis and opinion of it. So I really loved it. Like I thought it was going to be a little boring to watch a 2.5 hour documentary about pedals. And it turned, I thought they did a great job because they kept the pace up, they kept it moving, and they really walked you through the whole timeline of how the pedals evolved, right? In the late 50s until today, they take you right through it. It starts with fuzz. a broken recording console. I think everybody's heard this story, but if you haven't heard the full story, it's really cool. So, I mean, I picked up all kinds of little tidbits on this that I didn't know, and I didn't realize how this stuff evolved and how it got to be what it is, and all these things. Like, I'll give you a couple of examples. Like one of the examples is I didn't quite have a full understanding of how the whole thing got started with the fuzz. I knew there was a broken console. I didn't realize it was like those guys that actually went ahead and said, yeah, let's make a pedal that sounds like this, right? I didn't realize that Jimi Hendrix actually traveled with the guy that essentially invented the fuzz face, right? And this guy...
that whole story is amazing. Like, and they made the point of this in the movie. It's like, you think, Jimi Hendrix is kind of a guy who, somebody might have given him a pedal, or he goes to a shop. Oh, that sounds pretty cool. Let me use this. No, he had a guy essentially like creating pedals for him while on tour
and tweaking them like after every night's performance.
It's really incredible.
So like cool stories like that you get, right? And stuff like that. And some other cool tidbits of it were, when they got into a little bit later, like I didn't realize that in the 80s, like pedals essentially completely died off, right? Like the industry was taken over by Boss, right? Which was a Japanese company, and just completely was taken over by that. And really everybody was obsessed in the 80s. It was the hairband days. It was all about rack gear. So people didn't really find like those sounds accessible because it took so much rack kind of gear to get it. So it wasn't like, oh, I really like the sound of this player, I'm going to go buy a pedal and sound like that. The way it was in the 60s and even the 70s. It kind of went away for a little bit, and then it was really grunge that brought pedals back, right?
Yeah.
Which I thought was fascinating.
And of course, they interviewed a ton of people. I mean, the line of interviews was just incredible with this. And I only watched the first hour.
Yeah.
But to get the grunge, you bring up grunge. I mean, Billy Corgan on there talking about
Billy Corgan's
his sound and how he got it. It's a great insight into how a lot of these artists think and what they were thinking at the time and how their sound really developed. And I would like to kind of, I was definitely into the Pumpkins back in the day, and I was into the grunge thing. Not a ton, and just watching this movie and being into guitar now and understanding pedals a little bit and that kind of thing, I kind of want to go back and just listen to this music a little bit differently and appreciate it in a different way.
Yeah, like we didn't know because you and I didn't play any guitars back then in high school when all that stuff came out, when Siamese Dream came out, right? Like we didn't understand like, oh, that's a fuzz pedal. That's how he's getting that sound. That's the Big Muff. Essentially, it's like that whole, he explains in this movie like that album's the Big Muff, right? And it's like we had no idea. So like to go back and check that out and listen to how they did it, and it's really cool. There's all kinds of tidbits like that in the movie that are really cool. And they really hit the nail on the head of, talking about how pedals really always were and still are this creative outlet, almost another instrument, right?
Yeah,
they talk about that, right?
They do. My biggest take home was in the first 5 minutes of the movie and understanding that, the advent of the fuzz tone and then the tone bender, what that did for those artists back then,
it's huge.
Jimmy Page and all those guys.
Yeah.
Like that if it wasn't for those two pedals, rock and roll today would be drastically different.
Yeah, like those
maybe
pedals,
not drastically different, but it definitely wouldn't be the same as it is right now.
No, I think this kind of demonstrates, and you can hear it in the music too. Like these pedals, the whole thing kind of converge, right? Like Marshall amps, right? Marshall amps and these pedals like converged to like just form this sound that no one had ever heard before, right? So
yeah,
it was really cool, and then Hendrix brought it to a different level, right? Like just, all these cool stories you pick up on in the movie. Another cool thing in the movie was a little bit later when they talk about in the 2000s around the financial crisis, around the recession, how that really spurred a lot of people into the industry, and the demand for pedals at that time really blew up because just regular guitar players out there didn't have the money anymore to go out and make huge purchases on new amps and new guitars, and pedals were a somewhat affordable way to get a new sound and a new kind of creative outlet. And that kind of paired with the fact that really anybody that was kind of handy and interested could go on the internet and learn how to build a pedal. Right. And then and these guys just went out there like Wampler and Josh Scott from JHS around this time is really when they start to build their companies, because the demand was there, and two, the information was just out there on the internet, and they pulled it and put their own creative spin on it. Right.
And isn't that how we got the COVID vaccine? It's a metal zone, right? I mean, that's
true. And then it ultimately led to the COVID vaccine. So I mean, this is so I mean, this thing is just worldwide phenomenon. For those of you who don't know the joke we're making, there was a lot of them don't. There was a thing that happened where there was a conspiracy theory floating around that one of the vaccines for COVID was injecting you with a microchip, and they shared the scheme of it on the schematic of it online, and it was literally the schematic for the Boss Metal Zone. So the guitar community had a great time with that when that came out.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
But yeah, so who knew like this would end up being a chip injected into you with the COVID
That's
vaccine.
right, yeah.
But but like overall, like the movie is just fascinating to me, right? And there's some kind of anchors throughout it. Like Josh Scott is definitely from JHS Pedals is definitely an anchor throughout the whole thing. Like, because he knows a lot about the history, he's part of the narration of the history. And then of course, like, because he's so involved in the industry now, he's in it for the rest of the movie. But then what's cool, towards the end of the movie, which you haven't got to yet, Dave, they really talk to all these other boutique people. There's a whole section at the end which is about boutiques and the boom of that, and how people just started building these things in their garages, right? And their, or their apartments. And then they knew the demand was there, so they went and they sold it. And then it just started to build on itself because the demand is just there, and people want, and it covers everything from like people like JHS and Wampler that were doing like, quote unquote kind of basic stuff like gain and dirt kind of pedals, to people like Chase Bliss that just do these like crazy weird ass pedals, right? And it's really, and like Strymon, right? Like the advent of the Strymon guys are in it, right? You hear about the advent of Strymon and how it's if you're into pedals, this is a cool movie. If you're not into pedals, it's still a cool movie. Like, honestly,
it's still a really cool movie. And I usually feel this way after watching a documentary. You see all of this history uncovered, and just the breadth of what they've uncovered in this particular doc is pretty cool. I mean, there's so much. I don't even know, how do you even go about obtaining some of the history and then it probably is just like a huge rabbit hole. And I mean, some of the interviews I listened to, the guys that made the movie, they said that they're like, oh, we talked to this guy, and he's like, well, you have to talk to this person, you have to talk to that. And I think they said they filmed like 150 hours of interviews for this 2.5 hour movie. So it's like, talk about having a lot of material to go through. And they did say as well that they're going to start putting little tidbits up from some of the builders and people they talked to up on their YouTube channel, on the that would be cool.
So that's kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a little. I was, getting about an hour in. I thought it was kind of running like this is just like a taste thing for me, because I always like to be like held on the edge of my seat. I wish they had broken this up into 2 parts. Release part 1, kind of really whet your appetite. This is really cool. And then a few months later, kind of get you the other one. Because there's so much information out there. Like, could they have put out a 2-part series and each part was 2.5 hours? Because guys like us, I mean, I'm sure the wide audience might not appreciate that, but I think guys like us would probably sit there and watch the whole thing.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's why they figured, like, we got so deep into this, we want to do it. Let's just do it as a full kind of a feature thing, because obviously the community is up for watching it. So, it's what it is. So it's fun. It's
great review. I mean, everybody that you hear talking about it just has nothing but good things to say. So.
It's a fun movie. It's fun. It's definitely worth watching, and learning a little history, and then just understanding how we got to this place where there's now like thousands of pedal builders. I mean, literally. That's how many there are. So the guys actually said, the guys who made the movie, they said we tried to, actually get a number, and it was just, you can't get it. It's just endless, the number of people making pedals out there these days. So, which I thought was interesting. So,
like the craft beer industry.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar from that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Now, to a different avenue of the music sound, the sound of a guitar.
Dave's turn on the transition.
This is not one of my better transitions. It's okay, Matt. We'll just edit this out. Let's talk amps.
No, I won't.
I hear, no pun intended, that you got a new amp.
Yes.
I know that for sure because I've seen it and played it.
Well, it's right behind my head if you're watching.
And it's right behind your head.
It's right behind my head. We talked about it last week on the show. It's a Silver Jubilee Mini. And let me just tell you guys, it is incredible. It's an incredible amp. I'm really happy with it. I really feel like I should have done this a lot sooner. Right? And I don't know why I didn't.
And that was this week's Guitar Dads podcast.
And so that's just what it is, right? So,
tell us a little bit about the tones you're getting out of that thing.
So I'm getting some really good tones out of it. It really does the Slash thing incredibly well, if we're just honest, because you guys know that I'm a Slash fan. You know, he famously played Jubilees, right? It does the thing. It just does it. And it has great clean tones. You know, I think some of you may know that, you know, Red Hot Chili Peppers' John Frusciante always played a Jubilee, and he's like a clean tone player for the most part. You know, he loves his pedals and fuzz pedals and stuff, but, you know, he uses that as his clean, and it's great cleans. It's got a great crunch as well.
Oh, it's got an amazing crunch.
And, you know, the crunch.
And you flavor that with a little screamer. It's just, that is the sound.
Yes.
To me. I mean, that's like the sound I'm looking for. That is like the rock and roll sound.
Yeah, it absolutely is the rock and roll sound. The crunch channel with the gain kind of turned up a little bit with a screamer in front of it. And then it's got the lead channel, which is more like the slashy tone. And even the lead channel, like you put a screamer on it, or the Morning Glory. I love that. The JHS Morning Glory on it, you know. You put that on it and it just screams. It's just so good, and it's only 20 watts, right? This is the mini. It's the 20 watt version of it, which is still really loud, but it's also, you can like turn it up and start to get those power tubes going, and getting a little bit of that power tubes saturation as well, which is awesome. And it's great, but it is loud. You got to be careful with it because it's a loud tube amp. Right.
Yeah,
so,
and I know you're gonna put a video out of it, and I think this can be said about any video on YouTube. You don't really appreciate the sound of what you're hearing until you're actually hearing it for yourself in the room. And this is no different. This thing, you played it for me. I saw you sent me a video. It sounded great, but then when I actually heard it live and in person, the thing is just absolutely kick-ass.
Yeah, in the room it really blows you. This is why, and we'll get into it, Dave. This is why, like, it's really hard to replace that kind of a feeling with modeling, right? Like, amp in the room is really hard to replace with modeling.
This is why you gave up the lingerie gig.
That's right. Don't do modeling anymore. No, I love the modeling. I love the HX Stomp for my use for it, both here and in the studio and gigging with the band. I think it's great. It's a great solution, and it sounds great, right? I'm not going to give that up. I think it's good. For my band, having a screaming loud amp just isn't practical. We're all on in-ears. We like to keep the stage volume down. We're not like a screaming rock band. We're like a dancey cover band that we get into the rock and roll, but we play it through the PA, right? So for those purposes, the modeling works incredibly well, right? But I got to admit, when I turn this thing up, I put it through my 2x12, it's screaming, and it just feels so good.
It's such a good
There's
sound.
No substitute for moving the air. Let's just be honest.
And I really like what they did with the control plate on there. It's like this. It's like a mirror. So you look into it, and you're like, mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the best guitarist of them all? You look in the thing, and it's Slash.
Slash kind of appears through the mirror in the mirror, and you're like, a Slash in my room? What's going on?
Well,
yeah, it's an added effect.
That would probably be the only bad thing you could, not even bad, but the only negative thing you could even say about it is you can't really read the knobs until you like.
No, you can't. You can't. It's really hard to read the knobs because of the mirrored thing. Yeah, it's really true, but it's really great. So I'm gonna play around with it a little bit. I am gonna do a demo that I won't. This room here isn't really made to like be able to capture great, amp in the room sounds. So I'll put it through my 2 Notes captor. I'll put it through IRs, and I'm also going to try to do an HX stomp versus the Silver Jubilee and see if we can get that to sound close. See if it's possible. See how close the HX stomp can get with some of their kind of JCM 800 model. There is no Silver Jubilee model in the HX stomp in the Helix. But there is a few JCM 800 ones that I think I can tweak and maybe get close. I mean, we're going to have to find out, Dave. So stay tuned for that. But this thing, I'll tell you what, I waited a long time to get a really good high quality amp like this. And I regret it. I should have just got one a little bit earlier, to be honest with you. So if you have the means...
Okay, Ferris.
I would say, yeah, I'm like Ferris Bueller. I seriously, I would probably wait. Like what I probably, if I'm like hindsight is 2020, I probably would not have gotten like another higher end guitar and instead got this thing a little bit earlier. Just to be honest with you, that's probably what really? If I look, because it's that good. Like it's that good. It's like maybe I could have held off on the Charvel or one of these other guitars and gone with that, right?
Well, that's but the Charvel in that's not a real like apples to apples comparison in terms of like higher end stuff, right? I mean, in terms of price, right? So if you had to give up,
that's true.
So
well, I have like 2 Les Paul, like nice Les Paul standards, But yeah, you're right. This is a hard thing because the reason I got the second Les Paul standard that I got used was because it's actually not a standard. It's called the Les Paul T. Standard T or something. I forget exactly what it is. But anyway, I got that one because I didn't want to gig with my really, really nice Les Paul standard. So I got that. When I think about it, maybe I could have got something a little less expensive and got the amp instead. But at the same time, like I did have a real kind of gigging need. So maybe you're right, Dave. Maybe I did everything right. Maybe I didn't need the Strat and I could have got this a little bit earlier. Who knows?
Oh no, you needed the Strat. And that's another thing that doesn't come across very well on YouTube or any other video for that matter. And having not like seen you for 2.5, 10, 25 years with this whole pandemic.
Yes.
To actually see that Strat, I wasn't a huge fan.
I know you told me you didn't love the color. I know.
I didn't love the color when you showed me pictures and seeing videos. But in person, that thing is really killer.
I know. I was blown away by how good it looks in person. Yeah. But anyway, so I guess the moral of the story is, just get it all, guys.
Get it all. Yeah. That's why we have our tone deaf segment.
That's right.
Don't do every week, but we'll get back to doing that. Soon.
But the Jubilee, it's worth. If you're like on the fence about, should I get rid of like an amp that's a good amp like my DSL 40, good amp, right? It's it's a good amp. Yeah,
I have one.
It sounds good. Great. It does what it does. It does incredibly well. But when you go up to this kind of level of an amp, and you're talking twice the cost, of a DSL, right? It is worth it. If you're on the fence about getting something at this level, just do it. It's awesome.
Yeah,
you won't regret it.
I don't think you'll regret it.
Yeah. So there's something to be said for a real deal made in England amp, or like a Fender made in the USA amp, or a Friedman, or any of these awesome, kind of higher end amps that are out there. Like they do not, it's worth it. They don't disappoint.
They don't disappoint. No, I think you're right.
So something to think about, guys, when you're out there in the guitar, in the gas, in the throes of gas.
The gas. And also the Guitar Dads, we try not to disappoint either.
That's
check
right.
us out on YouTube and check us out Guitar Dads on YouTube. Check us out Guitar Dads Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and send us comments and let us know what else you want us to talk about, because we'll talk about it all. We don't want to disappoint either.
We definitely don't. The Guitar Dads do not. So that's the Guitar Dads podcast for this week, folks.
That's it.
Catch you guys on the flip.